RBK here. There's a bit of a technical issue with this episode in that I did not turn on my microphone for the first half of it. So we're going to dub over those sections and the audio for extra fun. If you go watch the YouTube version, I'm sure it'll be hilarious. Now on with the show.
Welcome back to a brand new episode of Full Metal RPG, episode 119. I'm your host, Brendan Carrion, and today I am joined by an amazing panel of RPG enthusiasts. We got Ashley. What up, Ashley? How you doing?
Hi, I'm doing fantastic.
Wonderful. I'm happy to hear it. And Darrel, how about you, my friend? How you holding up?
Doing really freaking well, man.
Awesome, dude. Those glasses and your flat delivery are scaring me. You're reminding me of Henry Rollins and Johnny Mnemonic.
I got the glasses. I wasn't paying attention when I picked them out, and after the fact, I looked in the mirror after I shaved, and I'm like, I look a little bit Full Metal Jacket. So,
it's great. It's a great look, man.
Here.
I love it. I love it. And on the Wheels of Steel, we got Richie Buzzkill. What up, playa?
Not much, man. Just here, boiling and frying and all the other apocalypses. Been a lot of fun this week, frying and muggy. So at least we don't have cicadas. So more talking. I'm still talking. This is ridiculous.
Right.
There's cicadas down here. We got cicadas.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they're not crawling all over you,
Right.
apocalyptic. I mean, maybe that's a trigger warning. Maybe people shouldn't,
No.
Mike gross.
Yes.
Yeah, we were playing. My roommate got the Horizon Zero Dawn board game, and so we were playing that last night. And the storm was going on. I'm like, it is over 100 degrees and hailing outside. Like hail started hitting.
Wow.
I was like, it is over 100 degrees and there's hail. Ow. Like I understand how weather works. Like it's up there, it's cold, whatever. But still, it was very, very interesting.
The thing is, and I know that's not a weather show, but I think it's worth mentioning. At least it was a monsoon. Like fucking Phoenix, we haven't really had a monsoon in like 2 years. I can't really remember the last real monsoon season. It's kind of interesting to me that like we took a year off of like super hardcore carbon emissions, just like kill the earth, breakneck speed carbon emissions, and then all of a sudden the weather kind of begins chilling out a little bit in the Phoenix metro area because it's actually been a really decent summer. The summer kind of reminds me of my childhood a little bit. It'd be nice if we could dial back those carbon emissions more and continue this trend of weather. Just like actually having some rather than just blasting infernal heat constantly. Mm-hmm. That's my weather hot take, guys. If you're here for weather hot takes, welcome to Full Metal RPG. We also do role playing games. So how's everybody doing? Everybody doing well? I feel like it's been a while since we did one of these. Everybody holding it on all right?
Yeah.
Great. Let's just get right back into the black hole then, shall we? The black hole is the ever-sucking void of time, money, and energy. It is role-playing. It is the greatest of hobbies. So who's doing something fun in their hobby life? Let's hear it. Who's doing something fun? Darrel, what about you, man? What have you been up to? You play anything good?
So we finally got back to Monster Mondays. We moved them to Thursdays.
What?
But for the alliteration, we are back on. So we did character creation. We did some story session. I've got a good group of players. And we had our first session. We're playing Vampire the Requiem. So getting back on track with my march through all of the Onyx Path books. And
nice.
It's cool. It's cool. It's been so long. I had to go back and like read the book as we were going through it, and I was like, we're gonna do some preludes so that I can just kind of explore the mechanics again and remember what to ask for roles and things like that. And we've got some really interesting character concepts. We've got a woman from the Salem witch trials in the 1800s who was staked, put into torpor, and is being revived into our late 80s, early 90s, pre-cell phone era dark metropolis. That we're calling it not Seattle and not Portland. It's kind of a mishmash of the two. But I got my gold star. I made one of the players cry at the table with the first session. So I think
Wow,
I'm on the
bro.
right track.
Like what kind of tears are we talking about here?
So the character has a lot of personal issues around child rearing and childbirth, and she did not expect. She gave me a couple of set pieces to play with, and I gave her some severe hardcore betrayal, where she was accused of murdering a woman during childbirth by a pretty man that she was sort of enjoying as a character. And it was this like super hard twist where the her mentor in herbology and witchcraft and whatnot had walked up to her and staked her on the gallows to prevent her from being exposed. So it was pretty fun, but it was a heavy emotional twist for her to kind of realize what was happening and have that slow burn of like, wait, I'm fucked. So it was
Oh,
good.
okay. So it was a cathartic feeling. It was
Yeah.
it was a real genuine interaction. Okay, that's great.
Yeah.
That's cool. That's neat, man. So what's the thrust of your game? What's the elevator pitch?
So without giving too much away to potential players who may be listening to the podcast, the idea is that essentially we're going to explore vampire society as neonates and go on some missions, find out more about the prince of the city, who we've established is a they pronoun user, but we're not certain whether that's because they are genderqueer or because they are potentially two twins who are inhabiting the same throne together, which could throw a plot wrench into things. And then we're gonna run some things with neonate level and just kind of do some level 0 stuff, have some fun, and then do a time jump and move forward so we can get into the deeper parts of the book and explore some of the higher level stuff. So I want to do both this time because I've done enough of the low level stuff now. I want to explore the higher level stuff, but jumping right into it kind of just makes you superheroes. So I want some hopelessness first.
I love Requiem. I think you're gonna have a lot of fun. Sounds like a great horror concept to me. Sounds like you guys are already kicking ass in that regard. I feel like there's not a whole lot of superheroism though in Requiem. I think it's not like VTM where they start getting real powerful real quick. Even once they start putting the dots on their character sheet, they don't get that much more powerful. The power curve is much more. I don't know what am I trying to say here. It's better for you as a GM. I think that's just my opinion.
Yeah, well, and it all comes at a cost too. The Vitae spending really limits you on your ability to just power monkey through things. So you've got to use that as a resource, and then I'm not just going to gloss over the feeding aspects because that's what I liked about the 5th edition book was that they really put an emphasis back on that. So we won't go into super graphic, horrible scenes, but we're going to set up feeding scenes that will have consequences. So
yeah, solid, great. Sounds like you're off to the races. Fucking killer, dude. Ashley. Oh,
wait.
Oh.
I was really been enjoying. Darrel and I do a story thing at lunch, and I was talking about how like I had a thing for the character that was Salem Witch Trials, and about basically her being a blood doll for 300 years instead of a person who has been in torpor. And so I'm really enjoying that, and I'm hoping that we get to continue doing that. So, and I'm still talking, so that's fun. I don't really know. I don't remember what I'm saying, so.
Yeah, but that's risky as fuck because if you are being used as a blood doll, then there's nothing that prevents that elder in the Requiem rule set from being bloodbound to you.
Right,
And
yeah.
there's no way that those elders want to be bloodbound to a bunch of little neonates or anybody, really. So, like, and that's one of the things that's really great about Requiem and why it doesn't descend into one of those weird superhero games, because, like, you start getting more and more powerful, and it comes with all these super drawbacks. Like, I can't fucking feed, you know what I'm saying? So you really kind of, at a certain point, you hit this tipping point where you want to go into torpor, or you become this complete psychopath that is doing exactly what you're saying, Richard, where you're creating like body farms of people that you can feed off of, and then you're having them killed before you get to like attached to them, you know, like, oh, make so-and-so disappear because I'm starting to feel love for them. I mean, it's really dark. It's a fucking great game, man.
Well, yeah, I think it should be, really dark to have these elder monsters who would have control over the city like that. It's really, I think, different, and that's why I was going with it. But we'll see.
Yeah.
And also, I'm still talking.
You do have the potential of running a crazy city where everybody is just bloodbound to everybody else and like super infatuated with them and like very jealous of like the smallest things, and that could be kind of cool too. That'd be like really dark, because it's like
great ideas here. I love it.
Bloodbound cult.
Yeah, like everybody's wild-eyed and fanatical, like, why did you look at my boyfriend like that? And you're like, I'm just trying to find the door, man. You know what I'm saying?
In addition, one of my players, Dominique, she loves to create these characters that are freaking just awesome. We did Promethean, and her character was mute, and so she actually spent most of the sessions communicating via whiteboard with us. It was awesome. Her idea this time around is that she is playing a vegan vampire. So we spent a good half hour discussing the ethics of veganism and how it applies to vampires, because technically you could find a willing victim.
Well, you could conceivably, like, if you were well enough connected vampire and you had some kind of endowment or something, you could get blood donors to donate their blood, and then you could like clone it, right? You could like genetically engineer blood, conceivably, which would actually be like a really interesting, I mean, kind of science fiction-y, but like an interesting plot line that you could really stretch out into a whole chronicle about, like, if somebody was actually trying to do that, that would have profound ramifications for what you might call the vampire economy. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. There would be a bunch of vampires who would be very interested in that, and there'd be a bunch of vampires who'd be like, fuck that. We're going to burn that goddamn lab down because we kind of need to maintain the status quo. You know what I'm saying? And part of the status quo is you got to get out there and hunt some dudes. You know what I'm saying? So that is interesting. I love it.
You basically just described True Blood.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
I was like, that's basically what that is. Yeah.
Right, yeah. Yeah, touche. Only without the waitresses.
Yeah.
Less waitresses.
Yeah.
If you want to play waitress, it's fine. How about you, Ashley? What you been up to? You got anything good?
Well, I am not in the Thursday Night Vampire game because I have Yukon Dark that's been going, which we just wrapped up this week. So we did our final session of Yukon Dark. Only one person died, and it is a surprise who did, because my money would not have been on this person to die. So we did have.
Was it the game master?
No. It was the game creator. Spoilers, sorry. But yeah, so it was good. It was so good. And Madi is an amazing GM. Like, she's such an incredible storyteller. Just how her creative writing background really came out the entire campaign. So it was a lot of fun. It was really good. We're done with that, and next month we're taking about 4 weeks off. We're gonna start a Tiny Supers campaign, and it's
wow.
Yeah, so that's been announced, so I could say that. But it's
is that your regular thing now? So you're just going on with like a new game set?
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So he said anyone who was on it could come back if they wanted to. He let us all come back. So yeah, it's gonna be just like little 12-session things, and it's just gonna be an ongoing thing. So so we're doing Tiny Supers, and Alan's actually jamming this. So I'm pretty excited to play with him jamming Tiny Supers.
Have you made your character yet?
I started yesterday because we're doing character creation this Thursday, and it's going to be on their Patreon. So if you are a patron of Gallant Knight Games, you'll be able to watch the character creation session. But I was looking through it, and I kind of came up with the concept that I wanted to do, and I'm excited. It's going to be great. So yeah.
So obviously, there's some kind of there's non-spoilers. We don't want there to be spoilers, but I do want to know. So if you're able to tell me, is it a street level game? Is it like a cosmic game? Is it kind of where on the spectrum between street level and cosmic is it as a setting, or do you know?
It's between the two, so it's
Between
not.
the two?
Yeah, it's not street level, but it's not like cosmic either. I don't think so.
It's kind of like where just your basic Marvel movie kind of sits, where it's like could go in either direction at any given moment, depending on the needs of the meta plot.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's probably the best way to describe it.
Nice.
So yeah.
Is doing the Gallant Knight verse?
Yeah.
Oh, nice. That's fairly interesting. It's the only inbuilt.
Yeah, it's going to be actually kind of fleshing out and exploring the Gallant verse a little bit. So yeah, I'm excited. It's going to be really cool. So, and I'm excited to see how Madi plays as a player because she was an incredible GM, and I'm sure she's going to be an amazing player too. But I'm excited. It should be good. But yeah, so that's why I couldn't join the vampire campaign. Although vampire is not my thing. We've talked about this before too. So and like. My roommate is in the campaign. And so I was talking to her about it. And she's like, first of all, Darrel is an incredible storyteller. And I was like, yes, he is. It's true. But listening to some of the things that were happening, I was like, there is no way I would not want to be in this campaign. It's just very just dark. And yeah, I was just like, oh my God. Like,
yeah. If you don't like, because in the pre-show we were talking about horror movies and going to horror cons and stuff, and if you're not into horror movies, then and really because when it comes right down to it, I think World of Darkness games are for horror fans and soap opera fans, and if you're a horror soap opera fan, then so much the better. But if you're not into horror, then you can skip the WOD stuff and be okay.
Yeah. So I'm interested to hear about it from all perspectives of how it's going, but it sounds like it's going to be cool. And actually, after this, I'm recording Memory Alpha, so we're gonna start recording.
Nice.
We took 2 months off of recording. We've been releasing episodes, but we took a little bit of time off recording just because it was really busy. And so I'm excited to get together with the girls and roll some dice today.
Killer. Richard, you have been super patient and haven't had a chance to say much. Lay it on me, String Bean.
So Paul from the Deep Dive crew has been running tiny dungeons, and then we're also playing Eberron and just a couple sessions in the tiny dungeons. It's more of a kind of a city game. We're all from the same militia, and we're kind of like there's the clocks of people starving on the table, and I'm playing Wyatt, a woman who is a daughter of a cooper and has an archer. She's an archer because that's kind of where her talents lie, and I'm still talking and I don't recall what I was saying. Well, I mean, I think it's really interesting to see where this will go. We were talking about maybe going to a different system but I think we're going to stick with Tiny D6 for a while. And I'm talking about the clocks. So he's actually put the clocks,
Are these literal clocks? Because I know you're talking about like the storyteller tool. I mean, do you think he's actually using that tool, or has he said that he's using that tool, or are you just kind of giving us a framework for how he's running the game?
Yeah, they're literal clocks on the table.
Oh, wow. So you're able to watch the countdown clock.
Yes.
Interesting. Cool.
So that's been really interesting, and we'll see. Hopefully we're going to go down the river and see a duke It's very low level, very gritty fantasy. We're no mages, no clerics, all like fighters and rangers and thief types. Yeah, I mean, I'm still talking. I don't know why, but. um, I'm confused about something, hand wavy, something. Oh yeah, we're chasing some thieves down to get our grain back. That's really what we're up to, and so still talking for some reason. I don't know why.
Ravenloft.
Oh, yeah,
How are you finding? First of all, okay, so how are you enjoying the Tiny D6 with this game?
I think it's really easy. I can play it really well. I can play it pretty drunk. It's very, very straightforward to play.
Do you guys drink hard when you play?
I mean, I have a few beers. It's not crazy or anything. I just, I know that I could play it really, pretty tipsy. We have basically the entirety of the rules as kind of a pop up in Roll20 to in order to do this really quickly. We had our first real combat last time that allowed us to really kind of see what our characters can do, and it was pretty easy. It's pretty straightforward. So, and I'm still explaining this apparently. So,
sure.
Yeah. So, I think we're going to talk about Eberron next.
So,
I will say that as far as the being drunk and playing thing, if you've ever listened to Memory Alpha, there are definitely episodes where one or more of us are very drunk, and we've definitely been able to play. So it's that easy. It really is that easy to keep up with. So no real math involved. I think that's the important aspect of that.
Alan,
Yes.
new sales position. A game for drunks. Hear me out. Put it on the front.
Yeah.
Endorsed by Full Metal RPG and the Imbibers. Here.
Tiny beer.
So, how are you finding Eberron at this point, Richard? Now, question: did you purchase the Eberron book from WotC?
I did not. I'm still looking for the better cover. It's the black cover is much better than the regular cover.
Oh no, it's a huge pain in the ass. It's like fucking $130 for the good cover. Yeah, fuck that.
Yeah. So I'm still looking.
So terrible. Yeah.
And we're kind of getting deeply into the kind of nuts and bolts of the way things work, and I'm going to probably have to read part of this cover. Eberron. So we'll we'll see if I can really keep up with what's going on.
I picked one up. So, okay. When we did our Tasha's episode, I bought Tasha's Cauldron and everything. And I bought Ravenloft at the same time because I was like, Ravenloft's out, and I got to cover this other book. Wanted to see Ravenloft have a sense of morbid curiosity, and if you want to hear our review on Tasha's, that is in the back catalog. But what I found is that Tasha's was quite good. And I was like, wow, if Tasha's is going to be this good, maybe I should check out this Ravenloft and give it more than just a flip through. It turns out Ravenloft is quite good. But then I was like, man, maybe I've been missing out on all these D&D books, and I should go back and see what people have been cooking up in D&D. So I went back and bought Eberron, because I fucking love Eberron. And that book is a stinker. So if you want to borrow mine, Richard, it's no problem.
Okay.
I will not be using it anytime soon.
Yeah.
No. I did not. I did not.
Oh, you didn't spend money. Okay.
So I just Googled it, and it looked like the two covers were, one looks like the general kind of either Pathfinder or D&D cover art kind of thing, and the other one is like black and fancy looking, and it's got like a ship on it. Okay. Yeah. That one, that one's pretty cool. That looks really cool.
Yeah, it's it's probably the best cover that they've done with their alternate cover thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What do you think, Richard?
Oh, I think that that is one of the great ones. I really like the Art Deco covers. They're going to. I don't really like the new Ravenloft cover. The Eberron cover is really, really good. And just happens to be it's really expensive right now, so I'm very sad. But yeah, it looks like your Ravenloft, the new one.
The Deco one.
I don't remember.
Special cover, yeah. Fine.
Oh.
Kind of lost here. Anyway, covers. We're obsessed with covers. It's just one of those weird things. So,
dude, I was so bummed on the Ravenloft alternate cover because I was actually gonna pick it up. I was like, if I'm buying a D&D book, I might as well get the alternate cover one. And I was like, nah, fuck it. Not even worth it. Not even fucking worth it. Which was sad. And now I'm just kicking myself in the ass for not picking up an Eberron one because it was sitting down at Game Depot for months. They just had them and they're gone now. And now everybody wants lots of money for them. But I'm not doing that. But let me tell you, they take the entire series of Eberron books from 3.5. Which was very extensive because if you played during 3.5, you know that they were really going at it. They were writing a lot of words, flesh out those campaign settings, and they squish it down to one book because they're on that whole we're not doing more than one book per setting thing. And oh man, is it a fail? It just really turns out that you really kind of need more than one book to explain Eberron. Like, there's kind of like too much going on. It feels gonzo in a not good way. It just feels like somebody who's having some kind of like manic episode. It's just like, oh, there's dragon marked houses, and then there's wars, and then there's psionics, and then there's dinosaurs, and you're just like, okay, just fucking calm down. And the new art in it is garbage. They actually like sort of weirdly, not weirdly, they kind of resurrected a bunch of the old Wayne Allen Reynolds art from the original 3.5 run of Eberron, and that's the best art in there because that guy really knew how to draw Eberron and make it feel kind of like how Eberron feels. Like the new art of the new guys that are drawn for Eberron now, oh my god, I'm just like it's like painful. It just makes me not want to play Eberron. So I'm happy to lend you that book, and you can just have it on your shelf for any little references that you need for the time being.
Oh, thanks. I appreciate that. Yeah. No, that would be good.
Dude, yeah, if you can find a good price on the older books, I would totally pick those up because those feel much better. You know, I might pick up Secrets of Sarlona. If I ever want to run Eberron, I'm going to pick up Secrets of Sarlona because that was a good book. Eberron's so great. It really bothers me that I feel like it's just gotten this short shrift with 5.0 because fuck man, it could be so fun. And the reason why I think it's could be so fun is because I picked up Ravenloft, and Ravenloft is bomb. Oh my god, have you guys had a chance? Does everybody here have a chance to pick one up?
Yeah, I've got it.
I don't have it.
I was gonna read it, but I was gonna now that we're playing it.
Well, yeah, there's certain parts that probably if you get into the domains and stuff, I would avoid those because they may come up. But there's really great stuff for your characters in the front, and then the stuff on the domains was awesome because a similar thing happened with Eberron as Ravenloft in 3.5. they sold Ravenloft to another company. They actually sold it to White Wolf, weirdly. And so there was a little while when White Wolf was running the Ravenloft license and putting out 3.5 books under a label called Sword and Sorcery. And they put out 1 billion of them, and I had them all, and they were and kind of, this is the sort of other edge of the argument that I'm making. There was like too much information in them. They Ravenloft felt claustrophobic with all the shit that was going on in it. Like you just couldn't walk down the street without bumping into Strahd or something. So like, I never ran it, never even touched it. I owned everything. I had a complete collection and I sold it all. New book breathes so well. Like it's the perfect amount of draw maps, leave blank spaces. It's like, it'll be like, here's the domain. Here's a top-down view of it that's very broad. Here's the Dreadlord and maybe one other character. Go nuts and just do what you want with the rest of it. And so that's kind of what I'm doing for our game. Is I picked out a couple of the domains that I'm like super interested in, and then I just kind of threw together a little Ravenloft game. We played on Independence Day with some other like old school people, and it was awesome. I had such a good time. I've really kind of felt like, as my schedule's been opening up this year, I've been kind of like rekindling my love of role playing, and I have a lot of energy for it. And now that I have a lot more time, I'm able to put a lot more work into actually writing my campaign rather than kind of just like being tired and showing up on game day and like kind of writing some notes on a napkin before I start, you know? So you guys were exploring, I decided to focus on Richemoulo as the first domain that we're doing. And you guys were kind of exploring the city of Pont-à-Mousseau. And I decided to put a fucking big ghost ship in the harbor, like as a MacGuffin, right? And my whole thought was like, I'm going to make this thing, I'm going to describe it, and it's going to be so scary and ominous looking that they'll just leave it alone. And then I will be able to decide kind of what it is down the road a little bit. Instead, what happened was I described it in such a way that was apparently intriguing enough that everybody went down there and was like, what's this about? And so we ended the session with Richard throwing his grappling hook from his robe character up onto the side of the ship and beginning to scale onto the vessel. So I've been writing the inside of the ship. It's like a dungeon. I haven't written a dungeon in like fucking forever. I'm having a blast. I love that feeling of having like 5 or 6 D&D books and stacking them up and having like 2 open in front of you and going back and forth and being like, all right, well now we need a little trap and now we're gonna figure out the CR on an encounter and how many XP should this social interaction be worth. It's actually really fun. So having a great time with that. Also, I am playing Shadowrun with the Dungeon Punks guys. Esoteric Enterprises game, season 2 ended, and legendary Mark Boardman of the Dungeon Punks, notorious Shadowrun GM, is running for us, and I'm having a great time with that because Mark's style is just very like easy going and conversational. That has kind of brought up this this apparently I have this weird idea of like the quote unquote ethical Shadowrunner that apparently no one else was on board with. So if you ever want to talk about like ethical Shadowrunning and what it means and relating that to Shadowrun first edition and second edition, please come on the Discord and have a conversation with us about it. We have already had a long conversation about it. I personally have this idea that Shadowrun is supposed to be run this particular way, but it turns out that the idea that I have in my head is not what everybody else thinks when they sit down to run Shadowrun. I'm beginning to get the sense that that's more of a me thing and less of a everybody else thing. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I really have problems with Shadowrun. I feel like that there's like the it's high fantasy and cyberpunk put together, and it really with the high fantasy instead of the low fantasy, it's like there's this like lofty goal, like people really want to like, you know, get power fantasy all the way so much. Like it blocks the way for the interesting climb to having ethical shadow running, as I know you call it, but we should talk about that on the Discord.
We could do a whole episode. We could do a whole episode.
Oh yeah.
I need to play Shadowrun. I've heard a lot about it, and I think that the fantasy aspect might draw me to the cyberpunk aspect a little bit more, because cyberpunk's fine, but it's not my thing. Fantasy, I think, might, like, the mishmash of the two might get me into it.
I think you definitely. What's wrong? What's wrong, Richard?
I think this is where I realized that my microphone has not been on this entire time. So my microphone will soon be back on, but that means my comment track will cut off soon. And I'm working on it. I'm reading Twitch. I'm currently trying to figure out what's going on and solve the problem. And I think I'm getting close to solving the problem, but reading. I hope this was not really annoying to whoever's listening to this, but hey, I think we're gonna fix the problem here pretty soon, and I will have to bid you adieu. That's how about now? Probably. Damn it.
What's happening?
Yep.
Yeah, you're good.
So apparently they couldn't. OBS was not getting my mic, so.
What does that mean?
It means that we may not have been getting a good recording, even on Twitch as the backup.
Okay.
So
sad.
So
let's jump into topic and make.
Yeah, just we'll start We'll start on the topic, and it'll be the Lost Black Hole. That was a lot of fun.
Oh well, yeah.
All
hey,
right.
If you were here and you were lilistening on Twitch,
well, that's the problem.
Heard it all.
Right.
Yeah, they would have heard me and Ashley and Darrel, man.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
3 out of 4 ain't bad, bro.
Okay, so let me. Yeah, we'll go to the topic, and then I'll insert the intro and say, "Hey, there was a lost black hole." I'll do that later.
All right, great. Well, so welcome back, and I hope that you're enjoying the show. And if you're already with us, then I hope you're enjoying it now. And if you are just starting, well, then Richard probably explained it with a sort of disembodied head voice just a second ago. So, Richard has a look like he just swallowed a frog. Richard, it's gonna be okay, man.
It's just it's one of those things where I get disheartened in my technical abilities, even though I pride myself on such things. Pride before the fall, as it were.
Don't let it get you down, bro. Don't let it get you down. It's all good, bro. It's all good. There's no Christian Bale meltdown moment here. This is one of those. So today, we've already been talking for like 40 minutes about role-playing games. I think we had a lot of interesting insights. Hope you were here live and you heard them. If you're just coming into the recording and you're like, what the fuck are they talking about? What about the black hole? Well,
I'll release the unedited version to the patrons, and they can enjoy enjoy the mute sections where I'll profusely say I'm sorry continuously. Anyway.
Anyway, that's an incentive to Defos watch on Twitch when it's live. So so we do have an episode to do today. We do have a topic that we want to talk about, and this is kind of like a weird one. And honestly, like all things in Full Metal RPG, we're approaching this as a conversation. Okay, this is a philosophical conversation. I'm hoping that through the process of dialogue, we can all work together to increase our own understandings. That includes mine of the RPG industry that we find ourselves like participating in and supporting. Right. So one of the things that I thought would be interesting to talk about is how first of all just like gatekeeping in the RPG space. Like, what is gatekeeping? What's it look like? What's it feel like? We've heard about gatekeeping a lot, right? Gatekeeping has become an issue. It's like where people talk about these experiences that they have, being made feel like they're not welcome or that they're not good enough in the RPG space. So what is that? And then also kind of sort of towards the end, I think in the second half of the conversation, I'd kind of like to talk about like, well, when is gatekeeping not gatekeeping? Like, can gatekeeping, is that a concept that can be weaponized to avoid criticism? All right, because I think that there's always got to be room for critique, but where is the line between like expressing a grievance that may be unpopular, and then somebody just being like, "Shut up, you! Sit down." And making you feel unwelcome? Where's the line between these two things? So, does anybody here in our panel have they ever been gatekeeped on, gate kept? Has anything like that ever happened to you? And if so, if you want to talk about it, what was it like and how did it make you feel? No, everybody's like
no. I think if anyone were going to, it would probably be me because you hear a lot about the, gatekeeping women from the TTRPG space. But like I said before, I just don't game with assholes. So I've had a pretty good experience I cultivate and curate the experience that I want to have. And so I play with people that I know, that I like, and that aren't going to try and keep me out of the space.
Solid. Anybody else?
I've seen instances at conventions, and it's what made me really conscious of trying to eliminate that as much as I could with conventions that I was a part of organizing. That some GMs, especially in the convention setting, get so locked into a concept for their game that when people come to the table, they're hostile to any kind of alterations to characters or story or anything that might throw their perfect little short novella off the rails. And we'll get into a little bit, but character-based gatekeeping is a thing that can turn people off. So
let's talk about that a little bit, because on some level, when I was kind of pitching the topic, I was imagining this was going to be kind of about identity politics, right? Like, I don't want to play with girls. I don't want to play with people with weird hair colors. I don't want to play with people who have different political opinions than me or something like that. Like, this kind of stuff. But this is an interesting nuance that you brought up, Darrel. What can you elaborate?
So, the first time I went to a convention, my sister Dawn taught me a lot about how to set up a convention game based on her experience doing it over the years with all of her years and years in the role-playing industry. And one thing that she told me was, if I'm making pre-generated characters, to make sure that I leave them gender neutral, don't provide names, and don't provide descriptions. Because as somebody is approaching your table, one of the first things they're going to do generally is pick up your pre-gen characters and take a look through them. And if they don't see themselves in those character sheets, they're going to walk away and not feel welcome. So I was actually, in preparation for today's episode, looking up some things, and D10 again has a great article called Decolonizing the Dungeon / Gatekeeping, where a player had an experience. He wanted to play an elf character, and he wanted to be a black elf character. And the GM said, no, that's a drow, and we're not having drow in this game. And he says, no, I don't want to be a drow. I want to be an elf who is black. And that's a great example of gatekeeping that turned racist, quite frankly, is that you can't tell a player, no, you can't be the character that you want to be. How does that impact your story? And if it does impact your story, how can you modify your story? It's little things like that. Or creating gendered characters. No. This adventure is set up for 2 female characters and 4 male characters, and that's it. And so if you don't get that balance at the table, somebody's going to be forced to play a character they don't like. And if that's a part of your story, maybe you need to examine what your story is and why that's a part of it. So gatekeeping through character sheets and pre-gens can be a challenge too.
What about and I could be mistaking some of the details of this. I wasn't there. But our friend of the show, Sarah Doombringer, was running some Lamentations of the Flame Princess. This is before that became completely abhorrent. And she had a Kill Bill style like adventure that was like the revenge of the brides, right? And it required that the characters be female, have to be brides, right? What do you think of that?
Well, so if your story is set up that way and you're pitching the story that way, if you have everybody, because I was going to run a pulp game in the Dirty World system that was the same thing. It was supposed to be femme fatale characters across the board. Your players have to buy into that, and depending on whether this is a group of friends at the table at your house that everybody can agree to that, or whether this is a convention. Because when we talk about gatekeeping, it's important to be aware of your friends at your local home table, but it really, to me, the areas where you're going to run into it more and where it's going to be a lot more problematic are going to be at your game store, at your conventions, where you're going to be playing with strangers. Like Ashley's point earlier, we don't play with assholes. We don't have those people at our table because you can police your own table. But the areas you can't police your table are going to be game store open things like Adventurers League type stuff, or Pathfinder Society type stuff, or when you're just kind of running generally in open convention spaces. So yes, you can pitch a game that says, everybody's going to be this, and if your story depends on that, that's wonderful. But if somebody at the table walks up and says, I love this femme fatale game, I love this idea of being one of these brides, but I would like to play a male version of that, well, what does it matter? How does that really change your story? And especially if somebody walks up and says, I want a different skin color, or I want a different ethnicity, or I want a different gender presentation. If it doesn't impact your story, why would you put your foot down and say, nope, you have to play this or nothing? It's nerf or nothing.
Honestly, man, like when I hear that story of that dude who's like sitting on his like grognard throne, like essentially like issuing forth proclamations that drow are black people, like that dude should have gotten fucking cold cocked just for that. Like seriously, that dude should have gotten fucking frog walked out of the goddamn convention center just for that. Like I'm livid. I don't even know when this happened, and I'm like livid for something that didn't happen to me like at some indeterminate period in the past. That shit just will not fly. And I think that you have to make a strong point about gatekeeping isn't so much about the private table, although I guess it could be, but it's definitely about the public space. My personal interaction with gatekeeping, I can't look, man. I'm a cishet white dude. You know what I'm saying? Like I rock up into the game store, no one gives me any grief. It's the game store is a kind of safe space for people like me. I think that there's a lot of people like me who like to talk shit on safe spaces because we have so many of them and we think that they don't exist. We think that we don't need them. So I've never had anybody. I mean, I'm trying to think of people who. Maybe I've had some vampire dudes try and flex on me, like, "Oh, are you vampire enough? Are you cool enough?" And I'm always just like, "Pshaw, whatever." I don't let that kind of stuff ruffle my feathers. But I have noticed in my personal experience a lot of gatekeeping in this kind of new realm of a miniatures game, a miniatures group called Old Hammer, okay? Which is like these dudes that gather to play old editions of Warhammer, and they insist on playing with the old models. Like, it's not just about playing with the old rules. They'll sit there and tell you all day and all night how the old rules are better, but you also have to play with the old models. And the old models are insanely expensive. And this group of Old Hammer players has, by fetishizing these old models, like jacked the price of them up like insanely. So to me, this entire Old Hammer community has this very kind of pay-to-play gatekeeper feel to it that I fucking hate, because I am all about like, let's get people into gaming. Let's get people in. Accessibility, accessibility, accessibility. And then these guys are all like, each one of these little metal men is like $25 from England if you can find him, and you're going to need 50 of them to play the game. And I'm just like, but what if I have other models? What if there are other models? And there and what's funny, right, is that they all have this kind of attitude about like, oh, the old models have so much more character, and they're just from this different era that has so much more character. And I'm like, Well, there's new guys who are sculpting in those styles and that have that kind of character, and then they always are like, "Oh no, they don't. They're so different in this like itty bitty nuanced kind of way. I'll only buy like fucking Tim Prow Heartbreaker models from 1984. You know what I'm saying? And it's just like, and that kind of it's almost kind of like classic car guy or something. You know, this whole sort of like, if you're gonna come and hang with us, then you got to show that you got that cheddar. Fucking hate it.
Like they don't make them like they used to, kind of thing. And honestly, even if I had those, that's the type of person I wouldn't want to play with. Like, can you imagine just how insufferable it would be to be at a table with someone like that? Like, even if you got through the door. Like,
I can.
Yes, I can.
I can.
Yeah. That's not someone I would want to play with at all. And to your point about the like game store being a safe space for you, that made me think, I don't know that I would walk into a game store and join a random table. Like, I don't know that I would feel comfortable doing that at all, even having never really been gate-kept or anything like that, because of the fact that I play at home with people that I know. I don't know that I would go into a game store and be like, yes, I would like to play whatever, Warhammer. Oh my god, I can't imagine walking up to a table of a bunch of dudes and being like, yes, I'd like to play Warhammer with you, please.
Can we play Warhammer today?
Yeah.
Let me ask you this, because again, the game stores are incredibly friendly to people like me, and some of them to people who look like me. I have long hair. If you're not watching this, if you're listening, I have long hair. I have a beard that is like speckled with gray. I mean, like, you can just throw a rock in a game store and hit someone that looks like me, and so I don't ever feel weird or out of place in a game store. Now, even if you wouldn't necessarily rock up to a table and ask to join an open play game, what's your feeling on discussing role playing like in and amongst the stacks with your fellow consumers? Because I don't feel like this happens quite as much anymore, but back in the day, there was like a lot of, you show up to the game store and you're flipping through a book and someone goes, oh, hey, do you like X? I also like X. And then you start talking, right? How do you feel about that? Like, is that something that's ever happened to you at a game store? Has anyone ever tried to, have you ever had that like sports guy or music guy moment where somebody goes, see, you're looking at a D&D book, but do you know how many hit dice a beholder has? To try and suss you out. Has that ever happened?
Not in a game store, but that's actually happened. I was at a work party, and one of my coworkers' kids plays D&D, and so he came up to me and he was just like, "So I hear you play D&D?" I was like, "Yeah," and he just started like grilling me. So it's one of those things where, I mean, he was in his 20s, like he wasn't a teenager, he was like in his 20s. So that type of thing has happened to me, where when people find out I play like RPGs, they want to know how much I know, and it's almost like there's a quiz on whether or not I know enough to actually have a conversation about it. So that's definitely happened, and that might happen to other people too. It might not just be because I'm a girl, you know, like that might happen to other people too. I'm not sure, but I have definitely had that. Never in the game store, because when I go to the game store, I'm usually very focused on things, and for as friendly as I am when I'm out and about, people don't come up and talk to me for the most part. So yeah.
I mean, I feel like the art of like just conversation with randos in the game store is sort of lost. And there's something that's good about that, because I couldn't tell you how many times I used to bitch about like having some like not good smelling person come up to me and like want to tell me about their character. You know, that was like the classic thing is, let me tell you about my character. And so that's gone, thank God. But also this other thing that I actually find myself really missing is gone, where just kind of the cross-pollination of new ideas. You know, you like it used to be, especially in this is very indicative of, I think, the White Wolf community, and Darrel, please feel free to either back me up here or tell me I'm wrong, but I feel like White Wolf people used to seek each other out of the game store and talk about the game a lot. That used to be a thing that we did. And now that White Wolf's not in stores, it just doesn't happen. You know what I'm saying? What do you think?
I totally concur on that. That the lack of physical presence in stores has really been unfortunate. However, on the flip side, one of the earliest reasons that I germinated the Monster Monday idea was to find other players who were interested in horror games and to show that it was still present and out there and doing it. This is, I was still swinging for Onyx Path real hard and printed out a giant poster-sized World of Darkness character sheet and kept that on the table as like it was a poster next to the table so that people could see it and walk up and be like, what is this? And that was the whole idea I did it, was to draw people in and have those conversations. On bringing it back to the subject of gatekeeping, one of the things I did encounter early on, and this is actually one of the first times you and I ran into each other. There was a panel. I don't remember what panel it was. I think it was the art. I think it was Ben Mandal's Art of the Table panel. But I had a lot of people approaching me and asking me about World of Darkness stuff and throwing lore at me.
Lore.
Let's talk about the latest editions. Let's talk about the many thousands of books you need to read to understand the full World of Darkness. And that was the day I decided that it was going to be New World of Darkness, which is now Chronicles of Darkness for me, because I was like, you know what? I don't need any of it. I want to tell my own story. Thank you. I love it, but
Was I one of them? Did I come up?
No,
Did I flex on you?
You were asking about lore, and I was just like smiling and nodding, but you were not one of the ones that was pushing it on me, because there were some people like, well, if you're not going to include Gehenna, if you're not going to include like the race towards, if you're not going to, all of the various splats, end games that were pre-written into the World of Darkness systems, then what are you even doing? And it's like, telling my own stories, thank you. But yeah, and still to this day, everybody who sits at my table for even a Chronicles of Darkness game starts talking about the lore, and I'm like, you know what? I love it, but let's talk about your characters. Let's talk about our story. So that aspect of the gatekeeping, I don't think it's a bad thing that we don't have that lore test going into World of Darkness specifically.
Oh yeah. Oh, and truly, right? Because that used to be some real fucking like bull macho shit when people be like, trying to almost like wrestlers or something, like trying to flex on each other about like who knows more about the Black Hand or all this other shit. And I still feel like the White Wolf Onyx Path stuff is kind of like that. I still get those vibes off that community. I don't love it. I mean, what I'm really kind of taking from all this is that, especially in our group, we're just not dealing with this problem that 5 years ago would have been like a hot button issue on this show. Like, if 5 years ago it was me, Ben, and Adam talking about gatekeeping, we'd be like sitting here rattling off all the fucking knobheads that we had either encountered at a game store or had seen at a con or heard about from somebody else. And what I love is being I'm hearing from you. Maybe it's just confirmation bias of the kind of people that I surround myself with, but I choose to take it as that over the last 5 years, the RPG scene has made incredible progress. And the fact that like we have people who are essentially the vanguards of role-playing. We've got Ashley, who's doing role-playing podcasts and streaming. We've got Darrel, who's in the stores trying to bring people into games that aren't necessarily represented. We've got Richard, who does cons, and he makes sure from that high level bird's eye view at the con what the code of conduct is going to be like, right? That we are doing what we as a group always said that we were going to set out to do, which was change the way the role-playing community functions, right? So this is all very heartening. What about when
Before we move on really quick, I do want to say that I want to make very clear that just because we are not experiencing this doesn't mean it's not still a problem.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And I certainly wouldn't want to imply that.
Yeah.
I'm just happy that progress is being made. You know what I'm saying? Like, because I mean, again, it's the sort of like the position that I start from, which is when I was first trundling into fucking game stores and I was just like a little guy with a backpack and some beat up paperback books, right? The world of role-playing was very different. It was just like, it was like conservative old guys, and gatekeeping was almost like the order of the day. Like, if we want to talk about gatekeeping and quizzes, the way I got into role-playing was I had a guy quiz me as to whether I was going to be allowed to join the local group. You know what I'm saying? And I defeated the quiz. I beat the Riddle Master at the quiz, the Sphinx or whatever, and I got to join my high school gaming group, and that's how like this happened. You know what I'm saying? Like, I mean, that's how I kind of like met Ben Bailey and shit like that. Through those experiences. And it just seemed like that was the way the world was always going to be. And if you had even told me, even in like 2001, 2007, in 2021, the RPG gaming community would be where it is now, I'd say that's science fiction. That doesn't sound even remotely real. So clearly there are material problems that real people are still dealing with in the RPG community today, and I would never want to diminish any of that. All that having been said, I am very proud that not just the four of us, that what I'm going to kind of go on a limb here and call like the left leaning RPG community has been cleaning up the space and has been changing the direction of the space.
It has. I have had an instance where there was somebody that has basically pushed us out of a space because of our opinion of a certain thing. But I really think that they were wrong, so I don't really care. But
well, I mean, was it over an opinion or was it over drama?
It was. That's true. That's true.
We're going to get into this in just a second here, which is what's the difference between gatekeeping and then just gamer drama? So go ahead.
Right. Well, I just wanted, and Good Fork is in here helping me with on the Twitch chat, realizing that I've screwed up. But he's like, what's the line between gatekeeping and critique? Like a critique, we do reviews, right? We don't always do reviews, but we do. Like the deep dives are kind of reviews of things, and like there can be perceived when you do a review of an object, a book or whatever, it can be perceived by certain quarters as, if you review something negatively, as an attack upon the designer, as something, because that designer may not be the same, as the same as traditional designers are. So like, I think that's where you're headed with this. And I really feel like the line is, you have to kind of put up front that this is a critique of the product. I'm not saying anything about the person unless that person is professing personally, or even through their literature, they're professing a political view. That's where we would get into trouble, I think, is if they were professing a political view that was of a dubious nature. That's when we would start maybe being perceived as, crossing the line between critique and gatekeeping, is saying that these their opinion is wrong and they're not wanted here anymore.
Well, I mean, and this kind of goes back to essentially our very hard line against rightists on this show. And I'm sure we have a very outspoken person on the internet who likes to take issue with what it is that we say on this show, and I'm sure that they are like at their keyboard right now with like rivulets of sweat running down their face as they madly type incoherent screeds about how can we talk about gatekeeping when we are the number one gatekeepers? We gatekeep the fuck out of all the fucking libertarians and the rightists and the fucking like hate people, and doesn't gatekeeping mean that there should be a completely level playing field for every single idea and every single conversation? There should be no holes barred. It should just be like everybody can talk about everything all the time. You know what I'm saying? I mean, how do you respond to that?
If I looked at a pie chart of all of the people that have tables they can play at and places they can go and feel safe playing and all of that, you got a big chunk out there. So I don't have to sit and listen to this, with them at my table. I don't want to play with someone who thinks Nazis are the good guys. That's just not fun for me. That's not something I want. Also, I do want to say, Good Fork is actually Cynthia that was on the gender episode.
Oh, okay.
So
thank you very much, Cynthia.
What up, Good Fork?
Yes.
Welcome. Thank you for listening. We appreciate you. Thank you.
But yeah, I think that that hopefully that this has re-energized their work because it's been pretty lame lately. So anyways,
terrible.
Anyway,
1 star.
1 star.
Talking about critique versus gatekeeping, I think it goes to a basic communication skill where in many of the communities I'm a part of, we've got, don't yuck somebody else's yum, be careful what you say. And in teaching, it's the praise challenge praise tool that, when we're talking about Eberron earlier, you don't like it. That's absolutely cool. When we share those statements, we can say, I don't like this. And that is an absolutely valid statement to say. I don't like this. I don't like Nazis at my table. Valid statement. I don't like the Eberron book, the new book and the way it's laid out. Fantastic. That's an opinion that you are sharing from yourself. It changes when you say, you shouldn't like this. Or when you say, this book is garbage objectively. Because you're trying to spread that opinion out over a larger area and say, if you like this thing, then you should feel bad. There are instances where we all have our own personal lines, and it's okay to hold those lines. But when it comes to like the Eberron book, essentially it's neutral and harmless. If that was somebody's first book and their first introduction into the universe, fantastic, wonderful. They might love it. I loved the Advanced D&D Monster Manual. If I went back and looked at it today, it probably doesn't hold a candle to anything that I would want to play with. But that doesn't make it bad. And I can say, I don't like it. I don't like original D&D because how complicated it was. But it was somebody's jam. And obviously a lot of people's jam because it was so popular. So when we communicate these things, say, I don't like it. But to say you shouldn't like it, that's kind of where we need to...
Right, and that's fine when you're talking about Star Wars or Star Trek or something. But like when you're talking about people, right? And because I've been very vociferous on this show, very vociferous about people who I don't think should be in the community, Like I think, these are the statements of Brendan, not of the show. I think that we should be going to fucking gaming cons, and when we see people who are making like right-wing behaviors or wearing right-wing symbols or attempting to fucking incept their bullshit into our spaces, rather than letting those cancers metastasize and doing what happens, say, in the metal scene, where now, like, there's huge problems in the metal scene between differentiating, well, are all these guys racist or just some of these guys racist? Is it like 50% plus one of them are racist? Like, we need to just get them out. We need to run these guys out on a rail. So if you're at fucking Gen Con and you're seeing people walking around with their, like, Operation Werewolf t-shirts or something, you should be like, hey, me and my friends don't like seeing you around here. If we see you here again tomorrow, there'll be a fucking problem. You know what I'm saying? Because when a fly lands on a fucking piece of shit and then it lands on your sundae, there's no amount of ice cream you can pour on top to make that sundae edible. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's over. So get rid of the flies. So I am on some level a hardcore fucking gatekeeper, because I am saying, if you represent certain things, not only do I not want to see you at my table, I don't want to see you at my store, I don't want to see you at my con, I don't want to see you at all. You know what I'm saying? What do you guys have to say to that?
That's, I mean, it's when, and I think, yes, I think you're right, but also there is this, like, going back to reviews, like, a lot of products are the designer too, right? So if I say I don't like Eberron, right, and Eberron was written by one person, right, that tends to be there's communities of people that will reflect that as you are attacking that one person. And a lot of indie space stuff, especially, like, because it's one person that wrote it, right?
It gets hairy in the indie space, man. We'll kind of follow up on that in a minute. Go ahead.
And so there is a culture of, if you're saying a bad thing about a product and a critique and a review of a product negatively, that you are not just saying not just because that you're basically saying that this ice cream sundae, they're seeing that fly ice cream sundae thing happen in this review, where you're just saying, oh no, I just didn't like this book. Like, I just didn't like it. But there are people that also do the same thing, but they will also attack the person. So it's like there's this like it's hard to qualify that like statement of I don't like this, and I'm not. But you have to then say I'm not attacking somebody because that person is controversial as well, right? That you're reviewing a product and then. I'm not saying that I don't like that person, but you're saying you don't like that person. So like that, I think there's that line that we're trying to find here between, perceived gatekeeping and a critique of an object.
I think that a big part of that too. I'm sorry.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, is in the rule of like in the comedic world, you don't punch down, so when you're saying I don't want you at my table, it's because the other people at this table, you don't think they should exist. When that is a line, like, yes, I don't want you at my table because of that. When it comes to critiquing versus gatekeeping and where that line is, like Darrel was saying, focus on the thing, focus on the book. If you then go to she's only getting this book written because she's cute or because she shows her boob on stream or something like that. That is when you're getting into problematic territory. If you're critiquing something, a book, focus on the thing, focus on that book, focus on whatever it is that you're critiquing. It's when you start attacking the person. And I'm not talking about keeping right-wingers and Nazis out of my space. I'm talking about when it becomes critiquing versus gatekeeping. Keep it off of that person. Just keep it on the thing that you're talking about. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and this actually kind of goes into one of my original sort of thought palaces or whatever, and why I wanted to have this episode. And it's and I'm gonna try and say this without coming across like the most problematic person ever, right? Like, and lose any cred I have, like any receipts I have for like doing like a progressive podcast. Just with one take, right? So there's gonna be some nuance to this, and when I came up with this, the concept of this episode, it was because I had this very particular experience, okay? And what had happened was like a year ago, there was a ton of RPG press, which is nothing. It's inconsequential, and don't want to overstate its value, okay? But there was a bunch of RPG press on a indie developer, okay? And I won't name the indie developer because I don't want to make it about that. But this indie developer, I will say, was female and was POC, okay? And everybody was expressing, well, I shouldn't say everybody. The news sources that I was seeing were writing very flattering kind of what could sort of pejoratively call puff pieces on this person, right? There were a lot of, I didn't feel like that they were super substantive. They just seemed kind of like, they were very kind of ephemeral, very positive pieces about just this person existing, right? And she was a game developer. She still is. She has some games out. And he was getting all of this publicity for like this kind of like next level game design. So for this reason, she was kind of on my radar. Because I wanted to know, why does everybody think these games are so good? Like, I haven't played any of them. Honestly, they don't sound that great to me. So then, that was just like a little thing that was living in my head. It wasn't even that big of a deal. I was like, whatever. And I actually was interacting with a member of the FMRPG cult. And they were talking to me, and they brought this particular developer up. They were like, oh, there's this new project coming out. It has so many great devs on it. Like, it's got this person and this person. And then they named the person who'd been getting all these pieces on as an amazing dev. And I was like, oh, are you a fan of X dev? And they said, oh, yeah, they do amazing work. And I said, please educate me on these amazing games, because I hear all about this person, but I don't know about their games and I want to understand. And they said, oh, haven't played any of their games. And I was like, what do you mean? He goes, oh, I've just read a bunch of pieces that say that this person is amazing. So I figured that they were amazing. And I was like, I don't like that at all. This just feels a kind of a lot like a perpetual motion machine where this person's just getting a lot of good pub, and because people are thinking, oh, I need to write this person's getting attention over here, and they're getting attention over here, we should do our piece where we give them attention, right? And I'm kind of like, does anybody know the games? Does anybody play the games? Or is this all just vaporware? Is this all just like a cult of opinion that has been created about a person? And if I go on my podcast and I say, no one's playing these games, how do we know that they're any good? Then I come off like a really problematic individual. You know what I'm saying? And they immediately go, you fucking gatekeeper, you're one of those cis het dudes that doesn't fucking like female and POC developers. And I'm like, no, that ain't me, bro. I feel like I've been very supportive of female developers and POC developers. But at what point am I allowed to be like, if you want to be considered amazing, you need to show up with some good games? Let's discuss. Let me figure out my own thoughts on this because I have contradictory thoughts.
Which is amazing because you're a human and you can hold thoughts that are in opposition to each other at the same time because you're complex like that.
Dissonance.
Yes. I think that it's important to evaluate why you're having the thoughts you are if you're going into critiquing something like this. So, for example, if it was a cishet white dude, same thing. Would you have the same thoughts?
Yes.
Well, I mean,
yes.
Clearly, yes. I would hope so.
Exactly. So at that point, I think it is a valid critique. You're critiquing, again, the fact that everyone is kind of saying that this is an amazing game developer, regardless of anything about the actual person, just what they actually create. And no one's actually seen any of the creations. I think that's a valid critique. Again, going back to what I was saying before, if you brought her into it and you were talking about her and that the only reason people are talking about her is because of these personal things about her, that would be a problem. So I don't think that critiquing an actual thing or product that's out there, as long as you're not bringing personal shit into it, I don't see how that's a problem. As far as this kind of wheel of everyone saying good things about her in her development of games, we see that in the media all the time, but on the negative of that. People are just like, oh, I don't like that because Fox News told me not to like that, or MSNBC told me not to like that, or whatever. So you see that side of it too. It's like, it makes sense that there would be both sides, as people just take the media in and they're like, this is what they're telling me to like or not like, and so therefore I'm going to do it without actually looking into it and doing it on their own. So that's a whole separate issue that plays into this too, I think.
And to piggyback off that, there's a right way to support people, and I'm going to gatekeeper this. There's a right way to support people and there's a wrong way to support people. To support someone by saying, hey, go play this game, it's awesome, without having played it yourself, it's awesome to raise somebody up, but you're not really doing them any favors, because eventually people are going to play the games and they're going to form opinions of their own. And if we've done nothing but raise a person up without actually trying their product, then we've got this. There's a problem with it in the art community too, where I disagree with a lot of art valuations, but that's a community issue. So instead, if there is, and I will do this as often as I can, if there's a minority game developer who is developing some awesome game and I'm getting some buzz about it, the best way that I can support that person is to pick up the game, read it, and run it. Take it out to a convention, run it for my home group. I wouldn't recommend a Maserati to somebody because I've never driven one. They're status symbols, they're awesome, but I've never actually been behind the wheel, so I'm not going to talk about it. Whereas, I can tell you that a Ford Focus is not a good car, and I can tell you that a Nissan Pathfinder is an awesome vehicle because I have test driven them. So in the instance where we're trying to raise people up, it's not gatekeeping to say, hey, have you played it? No. Hey, let's try it out before we form an opinion on it. That's the right way to support people. And if it's not good, critiquing it is fair, and especially I want to make this point really clear. Email the developer. Send some feedback directly to the person who wrote it. Don't talk about it in forums where there's a chance they won't see it. A lot of indie developers are, just learning, and it may be their first book. They could be an awesome writer who just needs a little bit of feedback to push them forward. Email those people directly if you can find contact information to say, praise, challenge, praise. Hey, I really like this about your system. Here's some things I think could be improved. And ask if they're interested in feedback before you do that. Don't just offer, hey, I think I could do it better than you. But critiquing a thing to make it better is a fantastic idea. Critiquing a thing just to crap on it and get it out of people's minds is where it becomes problematic.
I think that you're drawing the parallel to the art world is really on point, Darrell, because art, like visual arts, and then writing, these are both artistic endeavors. They're both subjective, right? And we live in this like capitalist society where you got to earn your bread or whatever. And sometimes the difference between a piece of art that sells and a piece of art that doesn't isn't the piece. It's the story behind the creator. And you could do like this is like you could do a whole fucking thing about like Andy Warhol, right? And how much the boomers like love like Andy Warhol, right? And you're just like, fuck, but was that guy a good artist, right? I mean, he certainly had a great story, and he certainly had a great ability to interact with people and to sell, and he certainly was great at creating his own legend. Was he really a great artist, right? And then of course there's people who have written whole books about this, debating this. I'm not trying to settle it here on Darrel RPG, you know what I'm saying? But I think that probably what I was reacting to was that same thing, was that kind of like, okay, now let's all slow our roll. Like, let's stop anointing the second coming on essentially a cult of personality. Like, a person who is very good at working pub is one thing. And I will totally, and to this developer, I doff my Blackcraft hat or whatever the fuck I'm wearing right now. Working the pub was some serious A game. To this day, I still haven't seen one of these games. Maybe I'll pick one up. I don't know. I'm kind of on this phase now where I'm like not really buying anything unless I'm like definitely going to run it. So I have this suspicion that like that my life will end and I'll never have sat down at a table and actually tried one of these allegedly amazing games. But much like in the art world, this idea of opportunity shows up, right? And I think the thing that, to address what you said, Ashley, the thing that kind of stuck in my craw about the whole situation was I found out that this indie developer had essentially gotten some pretty choice gigs on some very high level projects, right? And I was like, yo, this is because of the pub. This ain't because of the games. Like, no one I know. I mean, and it's not like a game. If I don't know someone who's played that game, the game doesn't exist.
Right.
I'm like, I feel like I'm pretty wired into stuff, and I'm like, is anyone playing these games, or are people just reading like lots of clickable fucking Facebook posts? Because you see what I'm saying? That and
yeah.
Go ahead.
These games could also just be in. I mean, like you said, it's not that I've never heard this, I don't know anyone who's played it, therefore it doesn't exist. Like, I know you don't have that view, but it may be in a demographic that is like a new popping up one or something that is not one that you're really keyed into. So these might be games that people play and they enjoy, and it might not be your thing, but maybe people are really enjoying it. And I get where you're coming from, where critiquing a demographic of people that you generally are seen, that's generally seen as like protected, or as we want to lift these people up and have their voices heard instead of ours. It can be sensitive. Like, I'm not gonna lie, it's hard to do that without coming across as holding them down because of who they are as people. But I think that a lot of that comes from they're on the defensive. We're on the defensive. Like, I'm going to throw me in there because women. But if something comes up negative at all, immediately hackles are up. But it's because you're constantly on the defensive against people that are attacking you as a person. So even if there's a valid criticism that's coming through, it's going to be met with like a hold on. And then if you can emotionally take that down enough to hear the criticism for what it is, then yes, criticism is good. Like Darrel said, if it's to make it better, then awesome. But when there is a person who is constantly attacked because of who they are instead of what they're doing, even if you have some constructive criticism about what they're doing, it's going to be met with resistance a lot of the time. And that's just an emotional response to that. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. And I'm really glad that I didn't just fucking do an episode while I was all like hot under the collar about it, you know?
Yeah.
Because, you know, it's been like a year or more and like whatever. The pub has died down. I hope that this person is off doing good stuff. And the thing is I really do hope that the games are good. I don't want people out there making bad games, you know, and I want people making lots of games that appeal to a lot of different people, you know. And again, like it's almost kind of like what you were saying, and if I can interpret a little bit, it's like if I had come on Full Metal RPG and been all like fucking full of piss and vinegar, the optics would have been real bad. It would have been like, look at this guy, look at this fucking knuckle dragger, fucking throwing punches, and it's just kind of like, you know what? I'm glad I didn't do it. This person shall still remain unnamed even by the end of this podcast. And I'm just really glad that I didn't fucking start something that, you know, didn't need to be started at the end of the day. So how do you guys all feel about this conversation? Are there any points anybody wants to make before we kind of wrap things up? We're getting a little long in the tooth here.
One thing I want to go back to really quick. You were talking about the Old Hammer community, and I want to make sure that we draw a line. Gatekeeping is when I walk into a store and people are telling me your shit isn't welcome here. Something like Old Hammer, or when I walk into a store and I say, you know, I love horror role playing, and horror role playing is definitely where it's at. As long as I'm doing that at my table, that's okay. If I'm trying to take over the whole store with it, that's not okay. And I've run into that before with the miniatures community when I was repping for Weird Games and doing Malifaux, where they literally told me if it's not Warhammer, you can't play it here. And it's like, okay. So I played at stores that let me play the games that I wanted to play, and they got my business.
Like customers or like the
it was the
store owners?
Staff, yeah. So problematic store I won't be returning to anytime soon. But it was a couple of different stores that did that to me. So I just want to make sure that we point out that if you've got a specific interest and you and your friends are into it, if you're into World War II bolt action style games, that's awesome. You're playing them, fantastic. When you tell me I can't play my game, that's where it becomes a problem. So enjoy your little niche thing, awesome. Just don't tell other people what to play.
Richard, any closing thoughts, my friend?
No, I think Cynthia here, and I've been watching her chat up in Twitch, but she, you know, we eventually get around to her very good point. Just know where, you know, I think that we have to, as people that review things, be willing to, you know, have the double edge of free speech come back on us. Like, it's not that we should be critiquing the product, just the product, not the person, unless the person is specifically doing some very harmful shit. You know, thinking back to the Zach S. Intervention that we did a couple years ago. It's about trying to look at games what you like and sharing what you like, and not about reviewing, getting, saying somebody's getting, it doesn't matter, press, yeah, as we are somewhat the press, we have our opinions, we put them out there, and it could have been very easy for us to ride the same wave of trend. Like, we could have done this episode just like that on the same games, and we like to lift up people that are that don't have their voices heard very often. We could have very well gone on that, or any other trend. We can jump on that trend, but we have to be true to ourselves, and we have to say what we like in games, and not necessarily tie it to a trend or what a person is perceived. There are games that we liked, and if we don't like the person, we say we don't like, for real reasons, and not because we don't want them to be heard. So
I think you make a really strong point here, Richard. And on some level, you could even posit that there was a trend that we could have embraced of being toxic assholes who deliberately market ourselves towards toxic gatekeepers. I'm certain that there's such podcasts out there. I'm certain that we could have. There would no doubt be like numbers. There would no doubt be metrics in that if we had.
Oh, absolutely.
If we decided that that's who we want to be, and I'm glad that we're not. Honestly,
right.
Because like that's the worst. And I think that we have like a long legacy here of pushing in the other direction. So and I'm much happier to have that fucking on our receipts than the other thing. So, all right. Well, hey, it's always a pleasure meeting up with you all and having a talk. Ashley, Darrell, Richard, thanks so much for coming out. All of our listeners, thank you for listening. If you're listening to this live, thank you so much. And thank you, Cynthia, for your feedback on the Twitch and for keeping the conversation spicy. We do appreciate it. And just one more episode of this clown coming up. And then it's on to Ashley, Richard, and Darrell. You guys are going to drop me off at the island and keep the Viking River boat going. I'll still be doing a podcast called Realm of Fire. It's about Warhammer. And you'll be able to hear all my dumb, bombastic, anti-rightist takes, but with Warhammer instead. So if that sounds like it's good for you, then there's we have a subscription feed on iTunes. You can find us real easy. Please subscribe. We can find us on Spotify. Please subscribe. That's Realm of Fire, all caps, exclamation point. Richard, I feel like there's an announcement coming from you.
Well, there is a couple things. I got my official my new T-shirt. I got my new T-shirt in with my favorite. This is my favorite reviews of all time on the back here. And then we're announcing, and I'll show you guys after this. I'm going to show you the next T-shirt and the new logo for season 3.
Wow.
So I'm going to transition to that, and I'll show you guys here after the show because I know you can't see it. But I'm going to I'm going to describe it. We got.
Is it up now?
Now I'm showing it now.
I love it.
Yes, thank you.
I love it.
You'll be. Basically, we got Wolfmungus to do an amazing piece that is kind of a cross between. Mad Max. It's actually very Shadowrun because it's an orc shooting zombies on top of a cop car while the world is ending with meteorites coming in the background. And we have a new chrome logo with a bloody red RPG dripping down off of it that was done by Doomscribe. So we will
homies, straight up homies,
the real homies. And this is coming. I'll figure out how I'm going to sell it, whether it's through TeePublic or some other form. But this is kind of the look of the future. And I think we will go ahead and I'll show you guys so you can react real quick. But we're real excited about this. And I can't tell you how proud I am of this particular thing. So, real excited about where we're going for season 3. Stick around. Give us a few shows. We got a lot of work to do. Oh
yeah, looking good. Good. Love it.
And it's we're not leaving. We're not leaving the space. We're just changing it up a little bit. So
yeah. Absolutely. So, yeah. Well, hey, thank you everybody for listening all the way to the end. And on behalf of me and Full Metal RPG, have a great night.
Bye.
Bye.